Okay, so we are now live. Right, hi, everybody. Good evening and welcome. My name is Brian Tam. I'm the Executive Director of the Independent Film Festival Boston. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all to our first ever virtual Q&A for The Rabbi Goes West. Glad you're all here. If you haven't had a chance to see the film yet, there's still time to do so. You can check out the link below or go to our website, which is iffboston.org, or bit.ly/MontanaRabbi. Those are all ways to do it, and it will be screening through this Thursday, June 4th of 2020. Please do so if you've not seen the film yet. Also, if you like the music that you hear, that was all composed by local Boston composer Rob Jarrett, and you can find out more about ordering the music there. That's also in the link below and at our site, iffboston.org. I'd like to say hi to my mom, who is watching this and seeing me do a Q&A for the first time, so no pressure there. I want to thank the screening support we've gotten from the Boston Jewish Film Festival. The BJFF showed Rabbi Goes West last fall. It was the New England premiere, I think. I think they were the last festival to happen before the shutdown happened, so I hope some of you out there got a chance to see it. So thanks for their support. I want to give a special thanks to the directors, Amy and Jerry. They've been longtime friends and supporters of the festival. We've shown films of theirs. They've been on panels. They've been on juries. They've done a lot for us. And since they couldn't have a actual screening, they've done this virtual screening, and they very generously offered to share the proceeds with IFF Boston, and I cannot thank them enough for that. So that's a really great thing that they've done. We're going to get started with the Q&A. If you have questions, you can go to the box on the right and click where it says show chat, and then type your question and then hit the send button. And then we will see your questions and I will read them and we will get answers for you. We'll get to as many questions as we can, and that'll be good. This should go without saying, but you know, we want everybody to keep it respectful. No hate speech will be tolerated. We're looking to have a very good conversation. If that's not what you're here for, then go somewhere else, I guess. All right, so I would be very glad to introduce you to our panelists. I want to start by welcoming the directors, producers, and writers of the film, Amy Geller and Gerald Peary. Meet them. There you go.
Hello.
And coming from Montana, I want to welcome the subjects of the film, Rabbi Chaim Bruk and his wife, Chavie Bruk. There you go.
Hello.
Hi.
All right, so we're all here. All right, great. So feel free to give us your questions. Until then, I'll kick it off. I want to start with you, Amy and Jerry. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what brought you to this project, how you met the rabbi, you know, how do you get together?
Sure. Well, this is Jerry's question. I always answer it. I always introduce the film with us because understandably, everybody wants to know what gave you the idea. So the quick answer is I am a quite secular Jew, but I'm very Jewish, and I wanted to make a movie which dealt with a part of Judaism that I care about, especially, and I decided something I care about are mezuzahs. We have a mezuzah on our door, which is an encased prayer offering, and it should be on the home of every Jew in the world. So our first object is, if you like our movie and you're Jewish, you don't have a mezuzah, put a kosher mezuzah on your door. But anyway, I did research on the internet, and I came across the young man who you see below, Rabbi Chaim Bruk, who, as explained on the internet, has this special idea, a special mission to put a kosher mezuzah on the home of every Jew in the state of Montana. Montana is huge. It's 14 times larger than Israel. And I thought, wow, what an interesting film that would be for just to go out and with a camera and watch Chaim putting up mezuzahs. So I called him up on the phone. I said, could we come out to Montana? He was incredibly gracious. And he said, sure. And Amy and I, not knowing at all what the story would be, got on a plane and hopped out to Montana to see Rabbi Chaim put up mezuzahs. That's it.
And Rabbi, when Jared first reached out to you, what was your first thought? Were you excited about this project? Were you wary? What were you thinking?
I wasn't wary. I wasn't wary at all. I get calls from journalists all the time. He introduced himself. I believe initially it was in an email, and I said, "Just call me." And when he called, he introduced himself as a documentarian, which something I wasn't very familiar with, but I got the point. He wanted to make some kind of documentary, and I figured, what can go wrong? A guy wants to make a documentary about mezuzahs. Come to don't let's not talk about it. I don't like spending time talking about things that don't happen. You want to make a documentary? Get on a plane and come watch me put up mezuzahs. So it was actually a fairly short conversation, but it led to a great relationship and I think, a pretty good documentary.
Thank you.
And Chavie, you know, they obviously, Amy and Jerry came more into your home and more into your personal lives. Was that something that you also welcomed?
I'm probably a little bit more of a tougher cookie, as they would tell you. But yes, I did. I was happy to welcome them into our home. I did have to, for my family, create some boundaries, which I think is really important and healthy. But I was thrilled to have them and to get to know them and to also start a beautiful relationship.
That's great. So before we go too much further, you know, maybe Amy and Jared, I'd send this to you. Some of the people watching tonight are maybe not super observant Jews, or maybe they are non-Jews at all. And so maybe they're a little bit confused about some of the various kinds of rabbis there are. There's a renewal rabbi, there's a conservative rabbi, there's obviously Rabbi Bruk. Maybe you could give a brief overview to people who just thought Judaism was somewhat monolithic to maybe help people get through that.
Yeah, well, we're definitely not experts. And a lot of what you see in the film is what we learned along the way. I mean, we were familiar with various forms of Judaism, but we learned a lot about Chabad specifically, which is a form of Hasidic Judaism. And then I don't know, I'm not sure what more to say about that, but the film tells you, hopefully you've seen the film and you can learn about Chabad. I think a lot of people think that Hasids are one group, and it turns out there's a lot of different Hasidic groups, and Chabad in particular, what's I think unique about them is that they believe in outreach. So they go to places where there are Jewish communities, even very small Jewish communities, and they reach out to unaffiliated Jews. So we learned all about that, and then we also learned that not only there was a Chabad in Montana, but there was a Reform Renewal community that had been there for a while as well. And they tend to be more progressive. They're modern. And modern, although, you know, one yes. Cannot, yes. And then the other rabbis that are sort of profiled in the film one is a conservative rabbi, and I guess there's another renewal rabbi too, Alan Setcher's renewal. And in Montana, you know, the sort of rules around these different types of Judaism are more flexible. So even though they might come from a more modern or more traditional or more progressive tradition, I think that what we discovered is that they were reaching out to people, all the rabbis are sort of reaching out to people where they are. And ultimately their approaches are different. So different Jews within the community might appreciate one approach over another. But I think all of them sort of, I wouldn't say perform outreach necessarily, but are sort of more flexible than they would be, let's say, in Boston, where, you know, things might be a little more striated.
Yeah. And Rabbi, one of the things that, you know, so you referred to kind of reaching out to unaffiliated Jews. And I think one of the things you say in the film is something about, we have enough Jews, you don't need to go look after them. So you're not reaching out to the Gentile population. You're just trying to get Jews more, you know, to be more in touch with their Judaism. Would you say that's a correct saying?
In Judaism in general, there's no such thing as proselytizing. It's against our principles of Jewish faith to reach out to non-Jews and try to convert them to Judaism. And so no, we only reach out to Jews. How we find our Jews is truly miraculous. I mean, we have Jews that we're in touch with that live 8 hours away by car in Montana, but they're 8 hours away from Bozeman, that, you know, we send Jewish literature to, we send mezuzahs to, we send rabbinical students to. So we have a great relationship with many of the non-Jews in the state. So it's not about not having a relationship. We have some of our best friends, not only in Bozeman, but around the state, are Gentiles who just love hanging out with a rabbi and his wife and have a good time. But we don't do any type of proselytization or conversion. I do think that what you said before was pretty funny, and I have to comment on it, that there may be people that think Judaism is monolithic. they got one Google search will let them know that we are not monolithic. There's nothing monolithic about Jews or Judaism. From the days of the Talmud to the days of Moses, we are not. One thing we are not is monolithic. What we are is debatable, but monolithic we are not.
Fair point. So when you first, came to Montana, what were you, how much did you know about the Jewish population there? What were you expecting? What were your expectations there?
So I came out in the summer of 2004 as a rabbinical student. You're talking to me? I assume?
Oh, yes. Sorry. Yes. Right.
I came out in the summer of 2004 as a rabbinical student with a fellow student. I spent a little over a month going anywhere from Miles City, Montana, the eastern part of the state, all the way to northwest Montana and Eureka, just visiting homes. And then I came back for a Hanukkah. And then I came back and Passover. I sent matzah to every Jewish home in the state. So I came back again in the summer of 2005. And by the time I dated Chavie, starting in January of 2006, we dated in January and we were married that same year in March of 2006. We already spoke about the potential of tapping into the growth that's going on in Montana and moving here. Now, she was on board to the idea from day one, but it's easier said than done when you live in San Antonio, where the average temperatures are 80 degrees, and in Bozeman where the average is about 10 below. But we made that decision pretty quickly. And by the time we celebrated our first anniversary, we were living in Bozeman, Montana. And I think I speak for Chavie, but she's right here. You can ask her. I think we really love it.
Chavie, is that true?
So true. Love Montana so much.
So
if I could intervene a second, so we're just to piggyback on what Amy's talking about, the difference in religions. Well, one thing interesting about Chabad, which is a kind of Orthodox Judaism, but a special kind is what the rabbi's wife does in Chabad, which is, I think, much more interesting than a lot of what people assign in rabbi's wife as a secondary person. She's there to boost her husband, the rabbi, but that does not seem to be true at all in the Chabad world. So I just wanted to ask Chavie about that. Am I representing that correctly?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think, first of all, us women, we're the boss, obviously. Yeah, I think what's really special about our experience and our job is the partnership that we have. And we really support each other, and each one gravitates to what they're best at and what they're good at. But it's really like we couldn't do it by ourselves, right? And we really thrive on the partnership and the importance of each of our roles. And it may, and in every couple that might look a little different, because every couple is different and have their different strengths. But it's really, I think, important to know. And I think once you walk into a Chabad house, you will evidently see that it's a really strong team and partnership atmosphere and aspect to what we do.
And I think Chavie coined it, if I may say so. Chavie coined it, and I think it's actually on the film. And since I've seen it on the film, I use it everywhere I go. That's my new title. It's co-CEO. So we're both co-CEOs of the same organization. It's an incredible title, which I never thought of. And then she said it on the film, and I said, you know what? That's my new title, not program director, executive director, co-directors, co-CEO. We run the same organization. We do it jointly. I have my role. She has her role. And we each love our role and stick to what we're good at.
Right.
So is that true? Chavie, this is a question for you. Is that true about Chabad on the whole, or do you think there's something about being in Montana which is a little bit more isolated than if you were like in a bigger city? Do you think that's more true for you, or does the location not matter?
I think it's more or less true depending on your personality and depending on how in the action or in the forefront you want to be. Some women like to be behind the scenes, and that's nothing to do with being oppressed or being belittled or looked down upon. It's just personality thing. But I do think in general, as a Chabad movement, as a whole, the women are super empowered, super strong. Like we have a women's convention in New York every year in January. And it is a room full of powerhouse, strong women. And if you would walk into that room, you would feel that energy. And it's a real, I think it's would be an exception to the rule to find a Chabad woman who is more behind the scenes and not as involved. I think that would be more rare than finding the women as the forefront and really involved in running the day-to-day life and whatever's going on.
So I guess, Amy and Jerry, what's interesting to me about this as a movie is that, Chaim and Chavie work really as a team, and then you work as a team as filmmakers. Is that something that you kind of recognize in each other? Like, was there, did you see kind of kindred spirits in that sense?
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, I think at the time we were filming, like, I can't remember exactly, but I think you had like the beginning anyway, you had 3 kids under maybe 4. So it was juggling a lot of things. So I think we were just getting more FaceTime with Chaim. So we were sort of connecting more with him. But then over time, as we would come back, which was, a good thing and a bad thing. I think, initially we thought this film would be a short film and we would come out and film once and then we'd be done. And we may have said that to Chaim. I don't remember now. And then we went out 5 times. So over 3 years. So I think that, understandably, their patience and tolerance for us kind of getting involved in their lives continuously decreased. But I think, I think in some ways, just as much as getting to know them during the production, we've gotten to know them during the distribution because we've been, traveling with them and doing these online Q&As. And I think what's really lovely is that we are people who have very different religious backgrounds, lots of different political views, but I would say, and I hope they would agree, like, we've become friends. And
Yes.
that's a really lovely mitzvah that has come from, making a film.
Absolutely.
So, and I think as many people have told me who've seen the film, they fall in love with Montana. I completely understand that. It is just an incredible place, and a complicated and interesting place. We also have our own preconceptions of Montana, right? Coming from the East and, that it's maybe a red state. It's way more complicated than that. And so that was interesting as well because we had never been to Montana before and we brought our misconceptions there and, those got sort of destroyed through the process of making the film too, which is important, I think, as filmmakers to be open to what, to not go with an agenda. It depends on the kind of film you're making, but in this case, we were really trying to be kind of open and let the story unfold before our eyes, and not control, what happened.
I hear a lot of documentarians go out to shoot a short film and then it turns into a feature, which is something I don't think they ever tell the subjects to begin with, but that sounds pretty difficult. All right, so we have some questions coming from YouTube. So the first is from Mega Bucky 2009, and they ask, is the Chabad group the same group fictionalized in the book My Name is Asher Lev? I guess it's a question for the Rabbi.
That's Chaim Patak. I think I read the other book, but I didn't read Asher Lev to know. It's about the Hasidic community, yes, but which sect of Hasidim, I'm not sure. Chaim, do you know that?
I'm with you on that, Jerry. I know that it's about the Hasidic community. I don't recall if it's Chabad or not. But it's a good book to read. They should read it anyhow.
Okay. That was a bad start. Maybe we'll know the answer to the next one.
That's a no. I think it's good to be stumped a couple times.
Yeah.
All right. So we have a question from Shaley Nalfas, who says, the film is well balanced throughout its structure of presenting Rabbi Chaim's beliefs and activities, which are then countered by other Montana rabbis. Amy and Jerry, can you discuss the structure of the film?
Well, I think we tried to structure it sort of the way we actually found out things over 3 years. In general, the earlier interviews when Chaim went putting up mezuzahs are the first people that put up mezuzahs, and we end the movie with literally the last person that we were there for mezuzah. And we structured in time because the most obvious thing is there are 3 children in the Chaim, the Bruk family when we start, and there are 5 at the end of the movie. So there is a linear kind of structure, but also I think it was in terms of us discovering other things about everybody. So I guess I knew Chaim was married, but when we went out there, but oh my gosh, he's definitely married, and my gosh, he has 3 children. Let's learn all about them. So that became a movie. And then as we went around, oh my gosh, there's more. This town doesn't just have one rabbi, it has another rabbi. So let's go talk to him and find out what his thoughts are about the Chabad world. And that's how, there's a conference, a 3rd rabbi coming to town, a woman rabbi. Let's see what she has to say. And then as the movie went on, I think the biggest event that happened, a horrible event, was that the neo-Nazis suddenly came to the state and decided they wanted to attack the Jews of Montana. So a horrible thing, but necessary, for us to cover it. So that became part of the story. So this is very different than a news team that goes in with an agenda. Let's go in and let's prove something in 2 days, and then let's jump out and we'll edit it. And I think Chaim would agree when it's about the Hasidic community, almost always it's a negative picture. They decided ahead of time they don't like Hasids, and let's go in quickly in 2 seconds and let's shoot some stuff to prove it, and then let's edit it and we're through. Hasids are bad people, look, secular people, look at that. And so we really went the opposite way to find out and in depth. Let's see a Hasidic family and let's spend time with them and see what it's like. And clearly, I don't say we concluded things, but we put out all kinds of evidence to show certainly that we had a different point of view than most news teams have.
And I would add to what Jerry said, is that most films, both non-documentaries and documentaries about Hasidic Jews in general, there's 2 things that they're missing. They're missing the personal life of the people they're talking about. They try to make everything seem cold and stoic instead of warm and welcoming and real. The second thing that they're missing from most journalists, and that's where Amy and Jerry really get a lot of credit, is they don't allow the Hasidim to ever defend their position. Meaning they'll play the position of anyone that has anything negative to say and leave it as that. Right. And here, Amy and Jerry always came back and said, do you really believe that? And if you do, how do you explain it? And do you not believe that X, Y? And it was really, and that is why I think this relationship is where it is that not everything about the film is Chavie and I, not everything about it is 100% to our liking, but the fairness that was produced in this film is truly unparalleled in the world of cinema. And we are grateful for that.
Thank you.
So I think that's an interesting point that you bring up. And I wonder, is this something that, you talk about with fellow rabbis about kind of like, we're kind of misunderstood. And as a result, are other rabbis more reluctant to talk to press or to documentarians, or are you all looking to kind of get your side? Like how do you fit into that in those terms?
I will say unequivocally that most rabbis, if they would have gotten a call from Jerry, an open call like that, there's no end game. We just want to come out and film. It would be 900 questions that would be asked before that would take place. What are you really about? Who is Jerry? I never Googled Jerry's name even. I have no idea, a guy wants to make a film, come make a film. And a lot of people warn me, you're a little crazy. You don't know, they're coming in your home. They could totally turn it the other way. And we really Chavie and I both put our trust and the trust of our children into 2 people who we really didn't know. But there's no question that rabbis are weary. And honestly, there's no reason to blame them for being weary, because we've been proven time and time again that the vast majority of journalists come with an agenda, and the agenda is not pro-Hasidic. And, even just before, Jerry was emphasizing that the other congregations are modern versus we're not modern. Like, I'm not sitting here on a Zoom call using modern technology with my wife who's using everything, no, we're just this archaic group of people. I just got off my horse and buggy 5 minutes ago to do the Zoom call with my neighbor's Wi-Fi. But my point is that we put a lot of trust in them, despite everything we knew about journalism. And trust me, even in Montana, I've had my fair share of run-ins with journalists who came to make a story, and even without malice, they simply had no idea what they were talking about. So they end up putting a quote in a story that makes us look really either uneducated or unhealthy or unbalanced. And they didn't mean it. They weren't the right people to do the job. And Jerry and Amy really took this seriously. And to their credit, they did again, a fair job. I think Chavie, even with all the reservations, would agree with me that the nudniks of Jerry and Amy. You know what a nudnik is, Brian? The pain in the butt.
He knows us. He knows us. He knows.
I've known Jerry a long, long time. So what is it about you that's different then? What is it about you that just said, you know what, come on, we're open to this? Like, what is it about you that made you say, or was it something about Jerry that made you say that?
No, it wasn't.
We're just crazy. That's really the bottom line.
I think part of it, Chavie's right. There's a part of us as a couple. We are this, even within the Chabad community, we have a reputation of being a little outside of the box, to say the least.
Yes.
But I think part of it is also.
Does maverick be a fair word?
What?
Maverick?
Maverick, pioneering, sure. But I do think part of it is, I sincerely believe that for 3,333 years, since God gave the Old Testament at Sinai, he's had the worst PR team possible. And we're trying to shift that. We're trying to give him some good marketing. God does not deserve the bad rap he gets. People need to know that religious people are not out of their mind. They're not cultish. They're not all these wonderful type. One of the articles that were just written about the film, it says they threw in the word fundamentalist. I was like, oh, good. I'm glad you got it in. We're fundamentalists. I secretly keep my 7 other wives, hiding in the basement.
He wishes.
But the point is that, we just felt that God needs some good PR. And if Jerry wants to talk about mezuzahs, maybe this will be the piece of PR that will give mezuzah the good PR that it deserves.
And just to interject for a second, I think also is if you have an opportunity, you have to take it, or else you can't complain later and then say, oh, they always say negative things about us. But here you have an opportunity to, it was taking a chance, but we put our faith in Jerry and Amy. But if you want to change something, then you have to be proactive about it. And being that we had the opportunity, then later on we can't say, oh, we always get negative press and we always get, well, here's an opportunity. It could have turned out negative, but we would never have known if we wouldn't have tried and said like, okay, well, if we don't like how something is, then let's change it.
That's fair. I guess this maybe is a little bit tying on to that. This is from Joe Josephson. So this is a question for Amy and Jerry. When Rabbi Ed claimed Chaim was not a rabbi, I wanted to know why and hear more about the obvious follow-up question. Why does he say that, and why do you not follow that in the film?
When Rabbi Ed claimed
I with all respect to this question, Ed does not say Chaim is not a rabbi. So I'm not. I wonder if he thinks, sometimes Ed thinks that Chaim thinks he's not a rabbi, and that's Ed's perspective, that he is not. Sometimes I don't remember if it's exactly in the film that because his kind of Judaism is not the same as Chaim's, that Chaim doesn't consider him a real rabbi. I am not in Chaim's head. I'm not in Ed's head. That's just, I know that's the way Ed has felt at certain times. But I think on the other hand, I'm speaking for Chaim. I think he has said, of course, I think he's a rabbi. So I don't know if that satisfies the question there, but that's my interpretation.
Jerry, I'm speaking for Chaim to tell you that you're always in my head.
Always, right. Okay, thank you.
All right, well, Joe, if that doesn't answer your question, feel free to clarify. So we'll move on to Charles Muniz. So this is also for Amy and Jerry. So they say, I get how spontaneously the idea of the film germinated. After filming and editing, however, did a central theme or narratives of some sort come through to you?
Well, yes. We hope it's in the film. I think part of what we try to do as filmmakers is, I know this is going to sound like a cop-out, but what we've discovered is that people sort of see their own central theme and narrative. I think what we discovered through the process of making the film was that, by no means, as you've heard Chaim and Chavi talk, like they are both representative of Chabad and also individuals, right? And so it became clear that we had to do some teaching, because we learned so much through the course of the film in terms of the the fact that there's 40, or actually I don't know how many, but there's like, I think there's 40 something different Hasidic groups. And, you know, we certainly aren't not an expert on all of them. We're not even an expert in Chabad, but, you know, that sort of blew our mind. And there were all these misconceptions about Chabad that we had, but also that people within our sort of film circle, our trusted film circle had. And so I think part of what we were trying to do is kind of understand those misconceptions. I think the other thing I do want to say is that we were very clear with both Chaim and Chavie that we weren't making a propaganda film, that it wasn't, you know, for better or for worse, it was going to sort of show all sides. And I think that that was another major motivator for us, that, you know, we wanted to do right by that promise, not just to Chaim and Chavie, but to the other subjects that were in the film, because, you know, they gave us their time and their you know, their voice and their person, and that's a big, you know, that's a huge thing to give filmmakers who do have a lot of power. So I guess I don't know if you'd add anything to.
Well, I think you wanted to talk a little about the process that we would have people watch the films. You want to talk? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So one of the things that we did on this film that's quite different from my last works was we showed the film to people along the way, which normally I would wait until the film is very close to being done, like we call it fine cut, and then I would show it to kind of a trusted group of advisors. They're usually other filmmakers or editors, and make sure that the film was working. But because we were learning so much as we went, and we just felt that we needed to show it. So we showed it very rough versions to different small groups of people. And those questions that came up through the process of showing it to those people, most of them some were non-Jews, some were secular Jews, some were there was a few more religious, you know, more observant Jews. And we knew we had to bring those back to Montana, which was another reason why we kept going back, and we kept, you know, pestering Chaim and Chavie with more questions, because we wanted to clarify further, because there were things that we had assumed that people would understand that they didn't understand. So that was quite different, and I probably will work that way from here on out as a filmmaker, because I found it incredibly beneficial to the filmmaking process. It was key to making this film as fair-minded as we think we did.
Yeah. So it's not just journalists who have misconceptions about the Hasidic world. It's the most educated people who think they know everything about Judaism or religion. So we were always having conversations with our friends who asked us questions that were, the basis of the question was just completely erroneous about Chabad. So that was what we were trying to do, is I think make the clearest film possible, which answered as many sort of questions that everybody had, as at the same time telling a dramatic story. So there is definitely a big educational component to our film that's there. So you should know a lot more about Chabad after seeing the movie than you did going in. That's important to us.
But to follow up on the structural issue, I mean, you mentioned earlier, you know, there's obviously a temporal aspect to their family is growing as it goes on, and you don't want to cut back and forth where there's, you know, 5 kids, there's 3, you know. So were you always kind of like starting with the spine of like, well, here's their life as it goes on, and then we'll bring in people to kind of respond to those things as it happens? Or like how did you fit struggling, or how did you fit trying to kind of put a theme together with like the reality of like, you know, the time is passing and you want to be true to that?
Well, in general, I'd say we would try. I'd say there are a lot of documentaries that you watch and you get suspicious because all these things are cut together in a way, and you know what? These didn't really happen. Like just Amy watched one the other night in which a woman goes from one scene to the next and she suddenly has a haircut, and yet the film pretends it's all the same day. So in general, we try to have things happen as they happen. It's not always true, but that was one of our abiding principles of this. This was an evolving documentary for 3 years.
Sure. So it looks like Joe has responded back.
Okay.
So he says, if I recall correctly, Ed, who I know and like, by the way, said very clearly that Chaim is, quote, not a rabbi, he's an emissary, unquote.
Oh, right. No, is it Ed that said that?
No,
I thought that was a different person that said that.
Yeah, no.
I wish we could. It's hard through the
Yeah,
Zoom.
I think it's somebody else.
I think it was
It's Shelley in the beginning of the film.
Shelley.
Yes, it's a different person.
He's a missionary.
Yeah.
Right.
I just want to introduce myself. I'm the missionary, and here's my partner, the other missionary.
Okay. So that was a statement. I think we wanted to show the most extreme, to show again all sides. We found a person who was extremely anti-Chabad and who
lives in Montana.
Lived, and so that was her conception of what Chaim is. That Chaim is a bogus rabbi because he has this whole different mission than what a rabbi should have. And then, as we do often in the film, I think we countered that, let her say her sentence, but then showed Chaim being a rabbi and doing rabbinical things. So the idea is, again, for the audience to watch and listen to her sentence, think about it, watch Chaim at work, and think about it, and decide for themselves who is right. And it's good for audiences to do that, to think.
Okay, so we have a question from Bonnie Millender. And this is a question for Rabbi Chaim and Chavie. So they ask, how do you feel about the recent fictional portrayal of the Hasidic community, Shtisel and Unorthodox? Shtisel. All right, that I'm not familiar with. Unorthodox is on Netflix, I believe.
So is Shtisel. They're both on Netflix.
Oh, okay.
You want to answer?
I'll let you start. I can always interject.
So lumping those two together is not a good thing, because Shtisel gave a very, similar to Amy and Jerry, the producers of Shtisel really gave a very balanced view. I mean, it's fiction, but a very balanced view in a fictional form of what life is in the ultra-Orthodox community in Jerusalem, and the most, if you wish, the most Orthodox community. But they gave a very balanced view. Unorthodox, on the other hand, is based on a lot of misconceptions. There was not a lot of opportunity to show the true light. Chabad and Satmar are two very different Hasidic groups. One thing I do know, I know a lot of Satmar Hasidic people, is that the portrayal in Unorthodox is totally unrealistic, and it's totally one-sided with people that have vendettas and agendas because they left that community, and really gave a very negative portrayal of a very warm, loving, kind community. I don't know that there's a community in the world, I don't mean the Jewish world, in the world, that it has as much what we call in Hebrew chesed, kindness, taking care of those that are sick and those that are giving birth and elderly. There's nobody in the world that I know that puts up the amount of philanthropy, financial support, and all that for people like Satmar Hasidim. And of course, that wasn't shown in Unorthodox. So if you're gonna do anything on Hasidic Jews, my recommendation to Hollywood is call Amy and Jerry and learn how to do it properly.
Thanks.
We're ready. We're ready.
Right.
Okay, so the next question is from SD Shaznow. Sorry, this is kind of low contrast. I apologize if I'm mangling your names. I guess this is really more of a comment, but I'll get it out there. They say, love the film, was having a hard week and it totally uplifted me. Thank you. The Bruks are incredible. Love the positivity and happiness they exude. Side point, they're the ultimate entrepreneurs. So let me turn that into a question. Do you see yourselves as entrepreneurs? Or is that do you not think in that kind of context?
It's interesting. I don't know if that would be the first word that would come to mind as describing what we do, but I do think it has a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Entrepreneurs.
What we do is very similar to an entrepreneur, right? Starting something from scratch with, your sweat and tears, and you are completely invested, and, it's all on you. There's no financial support from anywhere else. There's moral support from your family, hopefully, but it's really starting something from nothing, especially in Montana, where there was no established Orthodox community there for over 100 years. So I do think if you take the money side out of it, it's very entrepreneurial to go out and do something like that. So I see a lot of similarities.
And the truth is that we've gone through, and we go through It's like any other business. There's the ups, the downs. There's days that we have no idea how we're going to pay for this next massive holiday celebration. And then God sends another wonderful donor that suddenly swoops in. Sometimes they swoop in weeks after the event is already swiped on my credit card. And so very much like entrepreneurship, I think the primary difference would be that in entrepreneurship, the goal is to load up the bank account so eventually you can retire. And our philosophy in principle is never to load up a bank account. If there's money in the account, it means we're not doing something right, because we could do another program.
Yeah.
There's another program that could be done. So we got to use that money for another program and then work hard the next month, the next week to raise money for the next program.
Okay, sorry. Okay.
Okay, so this is from Daniel Novisky for Amy and Jerry. How did the other rabbis featured in the film react to it once it was finished?
So we've shared it with everybody. We were hoping to have a big premiere in Montana this June, but because of COVID, that is not going to happen. So unfortunately, and we've invited the other rabbis from the community, from the Bozeman community, to attend. We were also hoping to have one in Missoula, Montana, which is Montana is a huge state. So Whitefish and Bozeman, those are sort of the two main places that we filmed. Those are, I don't know, we flew into both because driving to them was just too long. Chaim, how far is it? Like 8 hours?
No, between 5 and 6 hours without snow.
Okay. Anyway, so huge distances between them. So we weren't able to show it publicly, but I'm hoping that, who knows, maybe someday we'll be able to bring it there. So mostly we've shown it, we've sent them a link to the film and had them watch it. And I think that, they also agree by and large that the film is fair. I think everybody, this is typical of most of the films that I've done, wants a film to be about their perspective and them. They want to be the star of the film. And so I think that, many of the rabbis might feel like, why isn't this a film about me, or primarily about me? And so that might be a disappointment. But my sense is that, they feel that they were represented in the best way. It represents the way that their beliefs and the way that they felt about the situation when it was unfolding.
Yeah, again, my journalist philosophy, because I was a journalist before being a filmmaker, is that you always try to get everybody in your story to have their best arguments. Maybe not Nazis, but anybody else, a normal person. You don't want to screw them by having them say something that they don't really believe. But so we really tried with every rabbi to represent them with their very best sentences and best religious philosophy. I can say with Francine Roston, our women rabbi, I know that she didn't watch the film for a few months, and we were really disturbed about it. And finally, she saw it, and Amy asked her about it, and it turned out a friend of hers had said, "You don't want to see this movie. You're treated terribly in this movie. It's really unfair." So she was so hurt. And when she finally watched it, she said, "You know what? That friend was wrong. That's what I said, and I'm treated with respect in the movie." So that makes us feel so much better. Yes, we wanted to respect everybody in the film.
I think that's great. I think it's hilarious that the East Coast people like, oh, it's 8 hours, and then you in Montana like, oh, it's only 5 or 6. Like that's. So from Daniel Wallach, this is a bit of a long one. So for Amy and Jerry, I was really disappointed with the ignorance displayed by many interviewees. For example, the therapist who accused Chaim of collecting souls, calling him not a rabbi, the woman who had the issue with Chaim bringing matzah, Rabbi Staffman's numerous issues with traditional Judaism and his overall territorial energy. Is it just me, or did these individuals come off as ignorant to you? I mean, I guess that kind of maybe goes counter to the point that you just made. But
yeah, I think that's a very harsh word because in general, I can see not everybody likes the Chabad world, and there's a legitimate argument to not liking the Chabad world, and I think that's made by some people in the movie. So again, those are typical arguments that you get of people who don't like Chabad, and they need to be in the film for that reason. So I don't want to say anybody is ignorant. I'm just saying that's what people think.
And so I guess, you said earlier that, that what you want to do is kind of, compare and contrast these different views. Is that something that you would go back to people and say like, okay, well, this is, this is what, the rabbi said, this is what, or did you feel that, that you wanted the movie to do that for you?
Well, we might have done that as questions. Yeah, I think, yes, we did. We certainly did go back to people, probably Chaim more than anybody else, and say these are some other positions, because that's what was important to us, to have, like if another rabbi had said something and Chaim isn't there, and we might be in the movie, we need to tell that to Chaim so that we hear what he would say in case we decide to put the two comments together. So that it doesn't happen what Chaim was saying, that there's a negative comment about Chabad and there's no answer to it. We wanted always to have an answer.
And basically we interviewed everybody with the exception of Alan Setcher, just because of logistical reasons. We interviewed the key characters at least twice, and sometimes even more than that.
Yes.
So,
and I think it's portrayed in that comment where Rabbi Ed says that they have a secret agenda, and that is that they want the Mashiach, the Messiah, to come. And every time you do a mitzvah, the Messiah may come. And then you came back to me and asked me, obviously, we thought about that. And I said, I don't understand how anyone couldn't want Mashiach to come. It's going to be an era of peace and tranquility. I mean, I think today with what's going on in America and the world, I don't know who wouldn't want a messianic utopia. And so that was portrayed where you asked Rabbi Ed something about what we believe, but then came back to us to ask us what we believe and verified. And I think, again, that goes to your credit of what you guys really did here.
Okay, so from Daniel Crocker, Rabbi, thank you for your openness. This may be none of our business, but how are your wonderful kids?
I think Chavie's more suited to answer that.
Our wonderful kids are wonderful. Thank God. They're doing really well. They keep us really busy and on our toes. And I appreciate the question and the interest in knowing how they are. They're great. Wish they were back in school, but we're managing.
Barely.
Here's a question from Wes Hicks. Hi, Wes. So this is a two-part question. How many mezuzahs have been distributed thus far? I guess this is for the rabbi. And how are you doing it in the middle of the pandemic?
So I think I counted last was when Jerry and Amy asked me that a week ago. I think we're in the realm of 450 plus homes that have a brand new mezuzah, didn't have a kosher mezuzah before. I just got a new delivery last week, actually, right in the midst of the pandemic, of 25 new mezuzahs. Because as I went around before Passover to bring matzah to every Jewish home in Bozeman and Livingston in our area, I realized that I got a long way to go. So how we're doing it through a pandemic, actually mezuzah is the easiest thing to do through a pandemic. As long as the homeowner gives permission, I don't need to be anywhere near them for them to get a beautiful mezuzah posted right in their front door. And so when there's a pandemic, when Jews and the world suffer, when the world is struggling so badly, we want the homes and the people in the homes to be super blessed. So it's actually a great time to add that blessing of a mezuzah. So like Jerry said right at the beginning, if you don't have a mezuzah, I don't care where you live, Montana or anywhere else, let us know. We will make sure you get a kosher mezuzah for your front door.
Okay.
Unbacked plug.
By the way, we have a kosher mezuzah on our door from Chaim himself, replacing whatever, I don't know, inferior mezuzah we used to have. But this is
inferior. It's either a mezuzah or not. Either it's kosher or not. You can't be a little bit pregnant. It's not a little bit kosher. It's either kosher.
I'm sorry for insulting my ex-mezuzah. This is good.
So there's a comment, I think, from Ed Brown, who writes to thank Rabbi Chaim. He always called my mother in Florida to say hi, even though he never met her. Today is her yard site, and the light is on in the shul, remembering her soul. So it's a thank you from Ed. Wait, what's happened? Where? Oh, okay. Sorry, I missed one. From Laura Coletta. All right, so this is also for the rabbi. All right, Rabbi Chaim, characterizing. Thank you. Characterizing Palestinians as people who shoot rockets felt like a crude generalization that lacked compassion or understanding of a Palestinian perspective. Is that true to your perspective?
That I lack perspective for Palestinians? I do. My job, my role as a Jew is to be very protective of my people. And I believe my people are the people living in the land of Israel that inherently belongs to the Jewish people because God gave it to Abraham. And does that mean that there aren't Palestinians that suffer because of their leadership and what they do to them and what they train them to do? No, of course. And I sympathize greatly with Palestinians that suffer. But in that heated debate with Rabbi Ed, which is what she's referring to in the film, the idea that a Jew from the United States of America gets off their high horse and rides their way into the Palestinian territories to show their sympathy for the poor Palestinians, when our own brothers and sisters are the victim of countless terrorist attacks by those same Palestinians, that breaks my heart. And I take it to a place where it's totally personal and biased. My father's Israeli, my grandparents are Israeli. My grandparents lived in Israel. My grandmother lived in Israel in the 1910s and 1920s, before there was when it was still Palestine. She was a Jewish woman living in Jerusalem. So the idea that we came and stole anyone's land is something I'm very passionate about. And I know there's a lot of Jews that disagree with me, but it's also a good opportunity for Jews to check their privilege, so to say. That's the modern term for it. What gives them the right to sit in a nice gated community in Beverly Hills and give me opinions about my brothers and sisters in Israel when they don't know the facts on the ground? And that was the passion that I expressed in that moment in the film.
Can I add? I'm going to get in a little trouble, but this is not, I'm saying Chaim and I and Amy, we don't always agree, and this is a point we might not agree. We still love Chaim. I hope he loves us. But again, in the movie, rather than give our opinion, we had in this scene two incredibly different opinions, different thoughts about Israel, Rabbi Ed and Rabbi Chaim. And as always, the idea is for people, listeners, the audience to listen carefully and perhaps choose one or the other. The person who just called, who was actually a friend of ours, clearly is on Ed's side in this debate, and that's really fine with us. That's your prerogative watching the film. Somebody else watching the film was going to be on Chaim's side. That's also fine for us.
There's many sides to this issue. It's not an either or.
It's an extremely complex issue. It's not even a one side or the other side. There's no one that can argue that the Middle East is not a complex reality. In my shul itself, in our own shul, like on everything political, we have many, many different opinions. And we don't spend our time, not during my sermons, not during Chavie's classes, not during my classes, discussing issues that divide humanity. There's enough people on the radio and TV and Facebook that spend their days dividing humanity. Our job is to bring people together. And just 48 hours ago, it was the holiday of Shavuot, the Jewish festival of weeks, or Pentecost. And there were 70 Jews with social distancing on our front yard celebrating. And if you looked around and I happen to know people's political views. And I love the fact that they don't know that they're sitting next to the polar opposite in political views, whether it's Israel or American politics. And I love that, because why does that have to be the focus?
That was one thing that impressed us. I'm sorry. I'll just say this in Chaim, that when we went to see Chaim's shul, it seemed to be half Democrats, half Republicans, all there together. And that's really rare in America today. So that was impressive. I'm sorry, Chavie.
I feel like you didn't actually answer the question. Can you repeat the question? What was the actual question that he asked?
Or she asked?
She asked.
Well, I mean, I guess the question was she interpreted his characterization of Palestinians to be people who shoot rockets. And she felt that was a crude generalization that lacked compassion or understanding of Palestinian perspective. So she is asking if that was true to his perspective. I guess really what she's asking is was that the way that he was portrayed in the film, was that actually representative of his beliefs, or was that maybe edited in some way? Or
right. And I think what my husband said is, obviously I believe is correct, but also and nuanced. I mean, it's not a generalization. I guess I speak for myself. I believe the Palestinians who are shooting rockets, we have an issue with, not with the Palestinians who aren't shooting rockets, right? So to generalize, to make a group out of the people who are, I think it's the same when oh my gosh, the Jews are ... You put a huge generalization on a group of people. I think it's important to differentiate between that there's Palestinians who do shoot rockets and there's Palestinians who don't. And we don't lump those two categories those two groups of Palestinians in the same category. We don't think that every single Palestinian is evil and wicked, right? We don't think every single Muslim is out to get the Jews. There are Muslims who are, and there are who aren't, and we take issue with the Muslims who are and the Palestinians who are.
And that's why I'm married up, because Chavie is my balance. If it was up, if I didn't have Chavie in my life, you have no idea how crazy I would really be. But to Chavie's point, I shoot from the hip, meaning I'm a passionate person, and that comes with a lot of great things, but it also comes with moments where you shoot something from the hip and then you're stuck with, oh God, what did I just
really? The question sounded like to me, are you generalizing everybody in that same category? And no, right? We take issue with the people who want to kill us, but not for the people who don't.
And my point to Rabbi Ed was that you're sitting here defending constantly, and in Bozeman, on the radio, you're always about the poor Palestinians, when you're not paying attention to the fact that so many of them are part of Islamic Jihad and Hamas and Fatah and all these terrorist groups. Of course, there's millions of Palestinians and not all of them are terrorists, but in the heat of the moment, when a New Yorker and a Floridian get into a conversation in the heat of the moment, you don't know what could happen. So that was my moment.
Yeah.
Well, this question is actually related to that. This is from Daniel Wallach, who asks, will the full exchange between Rabbi Chaim and Rabbi Ed ever be released? Would love to. The trailer included some that wasn't in the film. So is that a DVD extra or?
Could be.
Maybe. I mean, it's the challenge is a lot of it is pretty insider baseball. They started to get into some really specific things and using words that, maybe most rabbis and religious Jews know. But for us, we really wanted to make sure that for kind of a mainstream-ish audience that what they were arguing was understandable. So we did kind of boil it down. I think the whole thing was maybe 45 minutes, something like that, the debate.
Too long.
What's that?
Too long.
Too long, yeah. But yeah, I mean, we'll think about it. This is not the first time we've gotten that question. So
yeah.
We'll
we're very proud that we got maybe the only discussion in the history of the world with an Orthodox and a Reform rabbi sitting down and talking about incredibly substantive questions of Judaism. And they're both so smart and so articulate that yes, there's lots of other stuff that's on the cutting room, which is also quite brilliant from both rabbis.
Well, I mean, I kind of maybe going back to process a little bit. I mean, that's kind of the most tense movie. Like in some ways, if one of the themes in the movie is kind of like looking at these different ways that different groups view Judaism, and then you're kind of bringing them together in the most kind of direct way. So how were you thinking, that must have been tough to kind of figure out how to edit just to get the balance right. So like, how was that? What was the thinking behind it? How long did that take?
Yeah. Well, I think like every other scene, I mean, the question of balance is there in every single scene, and probably even more with this scene to get so that both rabbis say their best sentences, and neither rabbi can say, well, Ed was much better than me or Chaim was much better in that scene. So we try to edit it so both people are, and I'm going to use the word brilliant again. They're brilliant in explaining where they stand and where Chabad stands and where I guess Reform Judaism stands. And it's superb. I mean, and a lot of religious people, outside have watched the film, and we've had very, very good reaction from other people who, wow, that's Judaism, right? And and there's a famous thing that we don't want to show dirty laundry. Why don't we have only peaceful Jews? Well, Jews argue, and I love that about Jews. I'm an argumentative person. I'm not a sweetie pie, and that's what it is being Jewish. And that scene is so quintessentially Jewish that I'm very proud of it.
Not all Jews argue, Jerry.
Yeah.
Don't make
yes, they all argue. They all argue. I can't. They argue. Right. Yeah.
All right, so we're getting to the end. I want to, we have a couple questions. I want to try to get these in before we wrap it up. So Bruce Thaler asks, how is this film received by Rabbi Chaim's co-religionist Chabad community, other Chabad emissaries, rabbis, and family back in New York, etc.? And I guess there's also, Daniel Wallach also has a question that's sort of tied into this that says, you make of the testimony of the film and the other rabbis. So how is it received among your fellow Chabad community, and how do you feel how do you feel about like what was said about you and the fairness of the way it was portrayed, at least?
So I think the co-religion to speak for itself. I mean, I think Jerry and Amy are seeing a lot of requests from Chabad communities around the country, even around the world, that want to show it to their communities and do a Q&A. So there's definitely an interest. I think people feel very similar for the most part to our feelings of it being probably the most feared documentary that's ever been made about Hasidim in our lifetime. I don't know what happened in the 60s and the 50s, but in my lifetime, in Chavie's lifetime, one of the most feared ones. I mean, listen, there's some things that the other rabbis say about us that are untrue, that are hurtful, but that's part of a film. I'm not going to sit and defend myself over every what I would characterize as silly things that are said about us. You know, when someone talks about, you know, I think it was Rabbi Ed in the film talks about our schooling. Did you know that he went to an all Chabad school his entire life? And do you know that he only sees the... I'm sorry to break it to everyone, but we have a pretty open world view. We're very open people. We know, you know, we're very worldly. I don't have a PhD from any university, nor am I necessarily looking for that, but I went to rabbinical school and I read a ton, and I consider myself pretty knowledgeable. And so when people are derogatory about my schooling, when I went to an all-male, wonderful Jewish school, and my principal is actually in the film, Rabbi Lustig, I love the school I went to. Did I have teachers that were terrible? Sure. Most of them were awesome. And so there's a lot of things that are hurtful, especially about us as a couple and about what we do in Montana. But for the most part, I really believe that it speaks for itself. You know, Jerry said earlier that each rabbi feels like they got their point across. I feel like every rabbi in the film, every single one of them made Chabad look wonderful.
Right.
So I guess the last, Leandra has a question. I guess we'll go to this. So she says she'd love to hear Chavie talk about the reception of having infertility issues and raising adopted children in the Chabad community.
Okay.
If you feel comfortable with that.
Totally. I actually do speak about this a lot, and we had a very unique journey in how we created our family. And my husband and I went through the challenge of infertility, and I don't know, starting 14 years ago, kind of crazy, but we kind of hit the end of the road pretty early on in our marriage, and were told that biologically we were not able to have biological children. And you know, it's not the first couple that's happened to, but I think we're unique in the sense that we didn't accept that as our fate and as like, okay, now that means that we can't have a family. And we decided to pursue the avenue of adoption. And it has been done before in the religious community, but it was very rare. And especially in the Chabad community, I don't know of anyone else who has done it before us. And so it was really kind of pioneering and revolutionary to go down that path. And it was new and people had to get used to it. And I'm sure it was a topic of conversation in a lot of homes, but as a general reception of what we did and how we were accepted was with open arms. And we only had the utmost support and respect from our community and our family and our friends and our Bozeman community. And it's been a journey, you know, with its ups and its downs and its, you know, challenges and amazing moments, and a testament to the Chabad community and the religious community in general is that it was something that was different. It was something that people weren't used to or unique, but because we are open-minded people and because we accept people for who they are, we were accepted for who we were and what our journey was. And people had questions, and people still have questions, and they want to know, you know, the ins and outs of the Jewish law, how it works with Jewish law, and you know, all the intricacies involved, and we answer to the best of our ability to, and also respect our family boundaries at the same time. But a testament to our global community was huge acceptance and huge support for the way we chose to grow our family.
And the proof is that today there are many, many other couples that have adopted children. Every single one of them has called us in the process asking for guidance and understanding, and we've been able to share that with them. And it's one of the greatest joys, not only to have our 5 beautiful children, but to see the other couples that are not plagued with that fate of infertility, but are pushing baby strollers and raising children, giving these children the love they deserve, the love that every child deserves.
That's great. Well, thanks everybody for being here. I guess, you know, maybe if, I guess Amy and Jerry, if you want to maybe talk about what's next for the film. I mean, obviously people can see it for the next few days through June 4th, if you're watching it live, or you're watching it, the Q&A in the next couple of days. You can watch it still. Do you have any plans past that, or is it too early to tell?
No, so, you know, we had about 14 film festivals, mostly Jewish film festivals, programming it for March, April, and May. And so a lot of those festivals have been trying to figure out what are they going to do in this new COVID world. And some of them have decided to go online. So we'll be screening it with the Oxford Film Festival, which is in Mississippi, not a Jewish film festival. That's online. You can find all these on our website, therabbigoeswest.com. And we also have a couple of Jewish film festivals that are booking as well in the next, I'd say the next month and a half. And like Chaim said, we're booking some online community screenings with Chabads and different synagogues around the country, so people can see it that way. But you've got 5 more days to watch it online, so we hope you check it out. It will help support the Independent Film Festival of Boston, which is a festival very close to our hearts. And thank you for this really fantastic Q&A. And thank you to all the people who've watched it so far. It's clear from the Q&A that you watched the film and that you're asking amazing questions. We wish we had time for all of them, but we want to thank these wonderful people for giving us so much of their time, and they now need to go put their kids to bed.
So,
They're screaming.
If you would hear the background music here, you would know that we need to go put those kids to bed.
thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you so much, Rabbi Chaim and Chavie Bruk. Thank you, Amy Geller and Gerald Peary. And please enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your week. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.